All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started for now. So just as a reminder, I know I sent this out via email, but today's session, we're going to divide up our sessions between today in this admitted students webinar and our spring welcome, just to give you a little bit of two different pictures of the program and just to be able to get you as much information as possible about it. So today is going to be kind of details about the program, current students, and your chance to really ask questions of current students as well. And then the second piece will be faculty, and then we're going to hear a lot more from you as well for you to get to know each other at the next session. So that's when you'll be able to both share more about your background as well as kind of interact with more of your potential cohort mates in small groups during that session. So but feel free to chime in at any point as we're going through the presentation, and we'll any of the current students, you all can weigh in on any questions that come in from your perspective, even if a couple of you have already responded. If you want to add in other pieces to it, feel free to share whatever you'd like to, whether it's in the public forum or whether it's private messages. It's kind of up to you. So so with that, I want to start and just do introductions. And I'm going to introduce our current students that have joined us on the call today to give us some of their perspective on the program. So my name is Ryan Balch. I'm the program director for the MPP program. Real quick background, I started off as a teacher in Atlanta. I was a science teacher and then came here to do my doctorate at Peabody in the LPO program. And then I was the director of teacher principal and school evaluation for Baltimore City Schools. Before starting my own company called Resident Education. And then I kept teaching more and more classes at Vanderbilt till eventually they hooked me into a full-time job several years ago, and been enjoying it ever since. So with that, I want to introduce, and I'll just kind of go on the order of my screen. So if you want to just kind of at this point, kind of say a little bit more about, your name, what year you on the program, and what your track is. We'll get a little bit more into your kind of background and history as we later in the program with some of the questions that we have. So, Brandon, you want to start off? Brandon, do you want to start us off with your introduction? Yeah.
I can. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, although it feels like morning because it's so dark outside. My name's Brianna Summers. I'm a second year graduating in May, and I'm on the K-12 track.
Cool. Thank you. And Cameron, you want to go next?
Hey, everyone. My name is Cameron Stokes. I am a first year in the K-12 track.
Perfect. Thanks. And Raven, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Raven Powell. I'm a second year student and I'm on the higher ed track.
Great. Thanks, Raven. Go ahead, Sam.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, my name is Sam, and I'm also a second year student on the K-12 track.
All right, Michael, you are next.
I'm Michael, and I'm a first year on the K-12 track.
Cool. Thanks. And Fariha, you're our last one.
Hi, I'm Fariha Hussain, and I'm a first year in the K-12 track.
Great. And I also do want to introduce Erin, who's joining us today, one of our MPP associates. She is also a second year student, but she and Raven help with a lot of the coordination of the MPP program. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into our session here. So, all right, so I'm going to go through, this is going to be just some information, kind of an overview of the program to answer kind of a lot of your questions you might have about what am I actually going to be doing for 2 years, kind of what are some of the things that might be unique about the program. A lot of you are kind of deciding among multiple programs, which makes a lot of sense. And everybody here is, the current students have gone through that same process. And our goal here is to find you the best fit, whether that's Vanderbilt, another school, whatever that looks like. I want to give you as much information as possible about it. So we did our introductions. I want to start this by kind of putting up our equity mission statement that's specific to the MPP program and read through it. This is something that we had co-developed for the program over the last couple of years and revisited it in terms of our relationship to what we're doing in classes and so forth. So read the first part of it. The Masters in Public Policy program at Vanderbilt's Peabody College strives to empower all members, student, faculty, staff, and others to put EDI at the forefront of their work and discussions, fostering a culture of diverse identity, expression, and exploration, where all voices are heard, all experiences valued, and all members of the community feel welcome and safe in their learning environment. We're committed to examining and addressing gaps in our education systems. This includes an understanding of how historic and continued inequities have negatively impacted certain subgroups, such as students of color and those from low-income backgrounds. We understand that equity, diversity, and inclusion is integral and foundational, not only as a policy, but also when building the knowledge and awareness our students need to meaningfully contribute to the policies and practices impacting people in these systems. So our equity work at Vanderbilt, it's supported by our graduate assistantship focused solely on EDI, which we've had for the last couple of years. But then what this looks like at Vanderbilt is that we have collaboration among the professors to review syllabi. There's a very strong EDI committee at the LPO, which is kind of the larger leadership and policy, and the program MPP is within this larger department. Meet together, we review syllabi and readings, looking at it using kind of an equity-minded guide, where what we want to do is see equity as an integral topic throughout, rather not like having it on one day or 1 week or whatever it is. So other pieces our program does, we hold town halls every semester on topics related to how the program addresses equity. This goes along with other events that we schedule throughout the semester as well, as coordinated by our graduate assistant. We also have a lot of Brightspace resources. Brightspace is kind of our learning management system, Oak or Blackboard or something you might have used in undergrad. But we've got a lot of resources there, as in terms of forms to be able to submit to voice concern, resources and articles that we use to be able to hold our discussions. And there's also a lot of Peabody resources. There's an Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion on Peabody's campus, and we work in collaboration with their office for programming, for support in classes, and so forth. And then part of what we've also done is prior to starting the program, we'll read books related to topics to race and explore identities as part of having conversations and discussions. So in the first semester, students, they were reading, for the last couple of years, we're reading the book So You Want to Talk About Race in the first semester, so kind of in the summer before arriving. And then over the course for this semester, we were reading Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Tatum for our practicum course this semester. And that work will continue throughout the summer with a couple books that are going to be focused more on the Latinx student experience. So just a piece that is a part of us that I wanted to start kind of frame these other parts of the program with it. So I would say the MPP program focuses on the concept of personalization. So trying to figure out a good fit and develop a career path for you specifically. And we do that through 3 ways, through both the program, the people, and the place. So I want to start off with the program and how we allow for that kind of concept of personalization to come in place. So we'll talk about our sequence and the practical experience, and also just the MPP degree. So 2-year model, I'd say the goal is basically to have you prepared for your profession immediately upon graduation. So a 1-year master's degree might have the impact of being able to start your job a year earlier. But what we believe, and we've continued to emphasize the 2-year model, we think our program allows you to be more effective earlier. So what happens is that on day 1, you're going to make a larger impact on education following graduation. And that also means you have a greater ability to advance faster, which translates to higher potential for earning in the long term. So really having you ready to start, rather than taking that learning curve once you get your job after your first year 1-year master's, it's really kind of on day 1, you're ready to go. The second element, and I'll talk more about this, is that our core classes are scheduled between 4 and 7, which allows for either part-time or full-time work. And we'll hear from our students about some of the pieces they're doing in complement with their classes. So the ability to gain experience while you're learning, it's a really big factor on the job search. And so the other part is just thinking about a learning curve. Like everybody's going to be learning what it means to be in the policy world. And what we try to do is like you are entering the policy world once you arrive here in this combination of work and classes, and that learning curve is in a supportive environment. So you've got that learning that's sinking in with your real world experience, but also in the classes with your cohort mates who are experiencing similar pieces. So from students, just a couple of quotes that they've sent about this, in past sessions. Just glad I had time to explore different topics and different careers. So I wasn't deciding my next steps a couple months after I started. And then another piece that students have often brought up is that a lot of the jobs that they would apply for have requirements of 1 to 2 years of policy experience. And so you come out of Vanderbilt having that on your resume because you're working while you learn. It's just more access to opportunity, better starting jobs, and so forth with it. As far as what the classes look like in the curriculum, so we have 3 tracks. The curriculum, the K-12 and the higher ed track, they both have a policy core. For the K-12 track, you'd have a policy and school reform, and for the higher ed track, you'd have state and federal policy for higher education. The other 3 classes are in common. American education history, politics, and economics are taught incorporating examples from both K-12 and higher ed, just because, I mean, we have 2 different tracks, but the overlap between the 2 tracks is obviously in real life policy world, the connection between K-12 and higher education is tightly linked. And so we make that connection. So if you're K-12 track, you're going to be learning elements of higher education that will be very relevant to where you might be going, and vice versa. The second piece we have is a methods and data analysis kind of sequence, which is 3 classes: research and data and analysis 1 and 2, as well as program evaluation. And then the last part is policy electives. These are 12 out of the 36 hours are up to you. You can take them. We have a lot of different electives that we offer every semester, such as this semester we have urban education, we have teacher policy, we have school choice. In the fall we offer grant writing, education law, principal leadership, and you can also take classes across campus in any part of Peabody. But then also a lot of our students take classes in other schools. They might take it in the law school or business school, or you have the ability to incorporate those electives into whatever you want to for these. Basically, it just has to be a graduate level course. And the last one, we take our practicum class. This is what our first years are taking right now, and policy writing, which helps gets us prepared for the summer. The quantitative track has the similar kind of policy core, but really where you have, it's in the methods and data section is really what's different. This is 5 course sequence, is exactly what our PhD students take. It's what I took when I did my PhD at Vanderbilt. And so you're coming out of a master's program with, kind of a really advanced PhD level type of skill set, along with some electives for it. So gaining experience. So this is a big piece. There's really 2 opportunities for you to gain this hands-on working experience. So the first opportunity is work or internships during the year, and this is optional. It's not required of anybody. The second one is a summer practicum, and this is a required element of the program. So I'll first talk about this work and internships during the year. So I think there's some good questions about, like, should I get a position? And honestly, it's not required whatsoever. So it's entirely a personal decision based on your interests, the time you have available, the ability to find a good fit, financial need. All of these factors go into whether or not you should have a position. We just set up the program in a way that allows for it if it's kind of the right situation for you. If it's the right for you, we want to make sure the program is structured in a way that will allow you to do it. And when should you get a program? A lot of students will ask, oh, should I be worried about getting something now, right as soon as I accept? Most of the positions will come up open in summer and early fall. If I could advocate for something, I would say, get here and figure out kind of your rhythm and your schedule, do some networking interviews, and start looking for things once you arrive, so you can kind of have that time buffer if you're able to be able to look for some different positions. And just remember that you're going to be adding, roughly 25 to 30 hours of classes on top of it. So whatever you want to think about your number of hours, you just need to kind of keep that in consideration. A lot of our students will work maybe 20 hours a week, between 20 and 30. Some are full-time, some don't have work. So there's a range of all of it, but it's kind of up to you on that. What we do is we help you link to opportunities. through our Brightspace page that we have that has all of our professional opportunities. And as soon as you get like kind of a Vandy ID, then you have access to it immediately. And we also have career services. We have an entire side of things that entire shop that basically supports Vandy students getting work both during the year, practicum, and after you graduate. And if you're having trouble, we have career services and work one-on-one. I help connect a lot of positions as well. And then we also have a system of peer career mentors that help people kind of think about different positions, gain connections, and so forth. The second opportunity you can have is in the summer practicum. So this is a required piece. It takes place between the summer, between your first and second year. The only requirement is a number of hours. So as far as like what field it's in, my criteria is basically, is it going to help you get the job that you want, that's your best fit in education? And so with this, we have a supported class, this practicum class that we take in the spring leading up to it. So students are in this right now, so they're learning a lot of skills they might need over the summer. We're also thinking about placements and thinking about the kind of the policy process to prep them for these positions. Some things to think about is just basically kind of where do I want to work after the program? And could I get something in a similar organization or the same organization? You can think about organizations that are producing the kind of reports or initiatives or research you might want to be a part of, and reach out to them, start networking interviews, and ask current students where they considered, ask faculty. We have a whole piece we'll talk about, which is we'll talk about in the second session, but our list, which has all of our network, our alumni, and who you can reach out to, who professors can connect you to organizations across the country. And you can do this anywhere you want to. So think about location. You might want to be locally or anywhere in the country. These are just some examples of where people were doing some practicum placements this past summer, whether it be organizations, SCORE is a policy kind of advocacy organization, policy research that some of our students on the call are working for. Tara is on campus, and it's Education Research Alliance. There's also several across the Urban Leaders Fellowship, whether it's local nonprofits, whether it's, kind of state boards of education or state department of education. There's really just a lot of different opportunities for you to find. As far as the degree, so what, and the program, I think one of the things about the MPP degree is it's one of the only MPP degrees in education policy. So the MPP degree it's a signal that basically organizations that are thinking about large scale changes across schools or university, it signals both this analytical and policy analysis skills. So like it tells the market you have these skills, which are in high demand, but it also it says that I am really interested in applying these skills to the field of education. I have background and content within that education. So it's got kind of this unique signal that it gives to potential employers about the types of training that you've been able to have while you're here. All right, second part. So talked about the program. I want to talk about the people. So your fellow students, you're come in, and this is my favorite part of the MPP program, is just the previous work and professional experiences that students come in with. And it makes the conversation very rich in classes because we hear from so many different, kind of types of professional experience, whether it's, kind of geographical, and it contributes to the conversation, and your learning happens as much. I learn as much as y'all are learning from classes, and I think you learn as much from each other. And everybody's got an interest. A lot of people, say, hey, this is my particular area of interest, is looking at, student discipline, or it might be kind of community college. And so they're bringing that, but then they're bringing in this experience that they're also, as everybody's working and learning, in our practicum class the other night, we were talking about kind of framing political issues, framing our policy change issues. And we had several students that were working currently for Education Trust, who were kind of talking about literally the work they were doing in advocacy work currently, and they're bringing it into the classroom as well. So just that richness of your cohort mates improving the education experience. Generally, it's 20 to 30. This, kind of our Our current first year cohort is larger. It has above the 30, it's like 34. And our second year cohort is at the 20 level. There's 3 tracks, but you also have every single semester, we make sure that you have one common class. So you see everybody in your cohort the whole way through all 4 semesters. And it's just, shared knowledge and experience. Like the discussions happen outside of class, bonding happening together, like you're really finding your community with a lot of the members of your cohort. So also there's community on campus. So it's not just limited to the program. So I wanted to make sure there's, aware of several campus organizations that our students will be participants within. In the Graduate Students Association, Coalition for Black Graduates, Queering and Embracing Diversity, Peabody Jewish Association, Common Ground, Crucial Conversations that will help develop community across the Peabody organization as well. The other piece of the people element is really thinking about the faculty. So you have easy access to just high profile faculty doing really important education research. So I've listed, several of the topics that are there that, you can look through and think about whether, that might match up, but there's also several others. And I know many of you have written several different pieces in your statements about the various faculty you'd be interested in working with. And we allow people to pair up with advisors of their choice. We bring in leaders around the community as adjunct faculty, whether that's people like working at the Tennessee Board of Regents on the higher education side, policy director of the governor. They'll teach some of our different classes as well. The person in charge of grants for Metro Nashville Public School is the person who teaches our grants class here. So you're really seeing some of that real world experience as well. And you're paired with a kind of advisor, a faculty mentor. You've got, and you can actively engage with students through social events or conferences. Some of the social events are happening a little bit less this year, but we're looking forward to them coming back for more social events. But even at some social events in the fall, we had several faculty member at some events that we were working with. So, and you have this faculty mentor that will help you kind of on your career and your academic path. And then I serve as your advisor, just to make sure you have the right classes, ask you about different choices and so forth with that. So, and then I do really want to mention the career service is a pretty strong element of the program. They've got people that are dedicated to Peabody students. We do a lot of things with, career mentoring that we mentioned, the interview relay, which is coming up, I guess, next week, which will be, organizations across the country helping with practice interviews. They do a lot of work on resumes and LinkedIn profiles and cover letters, and as well as individual coaching. And they have, high levels of success of being able to place students. So the last piece I want to think about is just the place. So where will I be in terms of what does Nashville look like? I think this is helpful to think about, this map is looking at basically average, kind of test score growth rates of both math and reading over the period of 6 years. And you probably noticed the state of Tennessee has this it's kind of like a green speck within this purple area. And there's just a lot of really interesting initiatives that are happening within Tennessee. And so you've got a couple of things that stem originally from being one of the first winners of the Race to the Top grant in 2010, which continues a number of initiatives, whether it's data systems, whether it's teacher evaluation. Really, Tennessee is seen as an innovator in that space. In higher education, Governor Haslam's previous governor really had this huge push of Tennessee Drive to 55, where there's free 2-year colleges within the state, and making big pushes to be able to get 55% of the workforce or above have some sort of postgraduate, post-secondary certificate. The other piece is just we're in the capital city, right? So we have our local, state, and national policymakers right down the street. A lot of our students spend a lot of time. Actually, a couple of people who wanted to be on this panel today are meeting with local policymakers right now about some legislative action that's happening. And so it's really right there. And for instance, in our practicum class, one of the assignments is that you have to choose a topic and you have to advocate for that with somebody who has the power to change it. So our students will each be meeting with either local or state officials and kind of advocating for a policy of their choice And that's because we have such close access. We have a lot of events on campus, in the community working on it. And, for instance, in our practicum class, we were able to have, the state people from the state board and local legislators and, people from MNPS, and as across kind of all these different stakeholders, because they're here and they can come and stop by. So, and then some of the assignments that I talked about already. As far as Nashville, I mean, most people have probably, in terms of Nashville being a really appealing city, I'll let the youngins talk about more about this, but it's a fun place to be. It's kind of whenever I'm on a call with anybody that's not in Nashville, one of the things that always stands out to me, and they say, "Oh, where are you calling in from?" I'm like, "I'm calling from Nashville," and they're like, "Ooh, Nashville! I want to go there. It's so still got this just appeal across the country that people know something special is going on here," and it really is. There's a lot of stuff that is happening, whether it's the entertainment industry, events that are kind of happening within Nashville, but then also a lot of outdoor activities and so forth with it. So, so I want to stop there. If there are questions that are coming through, please feel free to ask any pieces about it. But I want to really kind of think about a few different questions that we'll kind of go student by student and have them each describe just their background, coming into Vanderbilt, some of the reasons they decided to come to Vanderbilt over potential other opportunities, whether it's working at other schools, and then really the kind of work experiences that you find. What did you find during the year, or for your, kind of what are you thinking about for your practicum? First years won't have their practicum necessarily secured yet. Second years did it this past year, so kind of there'll be a range of answers on that. And then in what way has the MPP program just prepared you to impact education? Because that's kind of, at the end of the day, what I would say a lot of the main focus is impact education in a way that fits who you are. So I'm going to stop the share right now so that we can see folks within the class. I'll go ahead and post those kind of 4 questions in the chat. And I'll start, we'll just kind of go through in the same order. So Brandon, do you want to start us off? And I'm putting the 4 questions in the chat for people to be able to weigh in on, and go right ahead.
Okay, and we're answering question 1 first by itself.
Yeah, go 1 through 4 first, and
Okay.
then we'll move on to the next person. You can give like a full story.
Oh, do all 4. Okay, got it. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Summers. Like I mentioned, K through 12 track, 2nd year. I'm originally from Georgia. I went to Rhodes College in Memphis studying urban education policy. Fell in love with it, all that good stuff. In undergrad, I primarily worked with nonprofits on educational equity and program eval, but not necessarily directly in policy. After that, I was a middle school civics teacher and department chair in a CSI, comprehensive school improvement, in Title I school, which I didn't know what those were exactly until after I joined the MPP. So it's interesting, like looking back and digging through the data at my school. Opportunity or reasons why I decided to come to Vanderbilt. I think Dr. Balch did a great job highlighting a lot of them, but I had a background in education, a little bit in policy from my undergrad experience. So I wanted to be around folks who already understood education. So didn't necessarily want to go to a general MPP program, but I still wanted the skill set of an MPP program to have some of those signaling things that he mentioned. I think the night classes were huge for me, like working and having money is important. And then just for me personally, I was teaching in Massachusetts for personal reasons, but I really wanted to return to the South and do equity work. And Vanderbilt gave me that opportunity to return home a little bit closer at least. And yeah, just doing the very like number crunching, even though it was a 2-year program, I found that it was cheaper to go to Vanderbilt than some of my other top choices. So that was good. Kinds of work experiences. I don't know exactly what their hiring format is right now, but I actually did Urban Leaders Fellowship before I started the Vanderbilt MPP, which was absolutely huge. Got the opportunity to work with an MNPS school board member who's now my boss, so that worked out nicely. But it was a great way to hit the ground running. They do similar stuff that Vanderbilt does in terms of, getting the state board folks in front of you, getting the Terra folks in front of you, getting the school folks in front of you, Ed Trust, all that good stuff. So you kind of know what you're getting into before you start. And then I got the opportunity to work directly on policy. Then I went to the North Carolina State Board of Ed. And it was actually a research practice partnership with Vanderbilt and some other organizations. We were working under an IES grant at the federal level on school improvement. Really a wonderful opportunity to sort of see, how the rubber hits the road in terms of, we have all this great research on school improvement, but what do we actually do and how do we make it happen in a contentious political environment in North Carolina? The superintendent's elected, so very fun there. Then I went to the Tennessee State Board of Ed doing policy research. I'm currently the P through 12 policy analyst at the Ed Trust, which I mentioned, like some of those connections were built through the MPP program and definitely wouldn't be there without them. Where I primarily do data research and policy work related to our state policy. That's the last question. I think the MPP was really transformational. I like a lot of things in policy, and if you join the MPP or other programs, they'll say, what are your research interests? And I'm actually a policy generalist, so I really love my job because right now I'm talking about school funding, but I imagine 3 months from now we'll be on to the next window. So I got to figure out what level of federalism I wanted to be in, right? Local, state, federal, which part of the policymaking process, which is one of the most helpful things we did in our practicum, sort of, idea generation all the way through implementation. And I like all of it. So I work in advocacy, which is great. I think the networking is huge. It's a very small world here in Nashville, which is good because that means you can connect, but always something to keep in mind when you're joining the fam. And yeah, I think the practitioners are huge. I'm in the class with the staff member from TBR that Dr. Balch mentioned, and after class we're just like asking him questions about legislation, and he's super helpful. Oh, and I think electives are also a great opportunity to build expertise. Jason Grissom did a school leadership class that was phenomenal. Knew I liked school leadership, didn't know anything about it. Now can speak thoughtfully about what it means in the context of what I'm working on.
Great, thank you very much. And actually in that, some of the pieces she mentioned about levels of politics, I'll kind of be giving some of those pieces in the next session in the welcome weekend, and then you'll hear it again kind of in the fall, and then again in practicum, just as you continue to navigate your journey. So Cami, can you go next?
Yeah, so again, Cameron Stokes, first year in the K-12 track. I'm from Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia. And before coming to Vanderbilt, I participated in a college access program called the Virginia College Advising Corps, which basically I was placed in a school and I helped seniors figure out what was next after they graduated from college or something else. And what led me to come to Vanderbilt, one was I was kind of getting like frustrated with a lot of the answers I was getting. Like I ask a lot of questions, and the teachers and the counselors and everybody at the school is just like, well, that's just how it is. And I just did not like that. So I definitely found that I was really interested in policy and like how different things are set up. And that led me to do some research on programs, applying. I did not think I was going to go to Vanderbilt. Absolute, like I only applied to Vanderbilt because the application was free. And I had no intention of coming here. But through coming to I attended like this Zoom and then like the admitted student Zoom, and just hearing about the program, just hearing about like all like everything that the current students had. Like I actually found out that I knew like 2 people that like were current first year. So like Raven on the call, like I was asking her like, please tell me like what's up with this. And then another student who's a second year, we went to undergrad together. So I was just asking all these questions, and they said they loved the program. And they really felt like it equipped them. It was starting to equip them to just make a difference. And that's really what I wanted to do. So I decided to come here and just take a chance. The kind of work experience. So right now I work for, so when you come here, everything's acronyms for some reason. But I work for TERA, which is the Tennessee Education and Research Alliance, which is a research practice partnership between Vanderbilt and the Tennessee Department of Education. So right now I'm a graduate assistant. So I just kind of help them with any, not necessarily like research tasks, but I just help them like compile things that the researchers need, but also with like checking our engagement, seeing are people using the research that our researchers are like putting out there and things like that. Yeah, in what ways has the MPP program prepared you to impact education? Well, I think right now, like, of course, like I said, I'm a second year. I mean, not second year, I'm a first year. So like, I'm just kind of getting started doing it. But I am currently in the urban education and social policy class. And that's had really opened my eyes to just like how much education interacts with so many different things. It's really shaping my interest a little bit more to seeing like, okay, you know, like, yes, I'm really passionate about education, but if we can work on this thing, education is bound to like improve for these group of people. So that's just really had me thinking. So I just think that the MPP program like gives you the opportunity to take courses with professors and really try and like figure out where you best see yourself making a difference.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Raven, yeah, I think he mentioned you. Pass it on to you next.
Great. So hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Raven Powell. And like Kim said, he was a CAC advisor. So I also did CAC, but I did it in Georgia. So we connected like the year that I started the program. And so similar to him, like just working with my students, working inside of the school. I was in a low income school. I actually went and I was an advisor at the rival high school to my high school. So I was back in my community. It was very, it was a job where I was just grateful to be in the work, but also at the same time, I just got to see how inequities really shape students' trajectories. Because like I said, I was back in my same community. We were considered middle class, right? So just seeing my educational opportunities versus my students kind of nudged me into this policy space. In my last semester of undergrad, I took a policy course. I loved it. I was graduating, so I considered an MPP, like Brianna said. But I always knew like I had this passion for education and creating equity, through educational means. And so after my first year or during my first year as an advisor, I'm like, okay, I have to get back into this policy space because we have to fix kind of these gaps in the system. And so I looked at a couple places. I looked at Georgia again. I looked at Vanderbilt. I looked at UPenn. But Vanderbilt just really appealed to me. Similarly, like I went through to the recruiting sessions and just learned more about the staff that was involved with students, just talking to students specifically. I think that was a huge piece because at the other schools, I didn't necessarily connect with students like on that individual level. So that was really like a factor that swayed my decision. And then the major thing is Vanderbilt gave me a scholarship. And so I was like, this is where I'm gonna go. And and it wasn't too far away from home. I'm from Georgia. The weather in Pennsylvania is brutally cold. And I was like, you know what, I think I can do Nashville. That's similar to home. And so that's kind of why I ended up choosing here. But as far as thinking about my practicum and work experiences, so actually my first year I had the just pleasure of actually being a researcher. So I started with one of my professors. I'm sure she'll maybe teach the class in fall, but Dr. Kanata, she taught the school reform course that we take during our fall semester. And so she reached out to me I think like a week or two before school started. And just, I submitted kind of my resume into our system and where like the professors just have access to kind of see who's looking for work study opportunities. And so she reached out to me and just asked me if I wanted to interview. And so initially she brought me on just as an administrative assistant. So I just helped her with her department work because she's also the program director for a doctoral program in our department. And so I was helping her with that. And then kind of midway through, she eased me onto the research team. And that was such an experience. The learning curve was definitely there, right? But I appreciated just being immersed in the experiences. Like once I joined the team, I was fully a researcher. So I was doing quantitative research. So looking at interview transcripts, going through doing coding. I coded hours and hours and hours of documents. And then once we did the coding process, then I was able to start memoing. And that's when, you go back through the codes and now you're pretty much writing the research papers, right? And so with that, that was just, like I said, there was a lot of experience that I was able to gain as a student. The workload was a lot, but one thing about it, and I wasn't as good with it early on when I started on the research team, but definitely just, keeping those lines of communication open with Dr. Kanata, just like letting her know, like, hey, this is a lot this week. I have a lot going on with classes. And they were very understanding because most of the researchers, I mean, we're in grad school, so they know that we have kind of our workloads for classes, but also, just understanding that we just have to balance the two. And so with that, I would say definitely you will get the opportunity to work in different policy spaces. It's a combination of you going out to seek opportunities, but also some of them just come across your lap just from being in these spaces with policymakers. A lot of our professors are very much, active in their field. So either they're doing research or they're working with different education research agencies here in Nashville. And so you just have the opportunity to really find your way in getting some policy experience. And then lastly, I would just say, and similar to the answers that I just gave, but the MPP program has really just prepared me to just go out and be ready to kind of take on tasks that come my way. I feel like I really gained that skill set working as a researcher. Like I said, that learning curve was very steep, but I had to just be willing to jump in and say the things that I didn't know, and be willing to learn from the people around me. And so I think the program has done that. And then definitely, I think Brianna mentioned it a little bit, but the networking opportunities that is just here, I really feel like it's unmatched. I mean, Nashville is kind of small, so you see kind of similar people, even when it comes to art professors just bringing in guest speakers from different agencies. So you get to meet a lot of the playmakers in the policy space here. So I would say, as far as my professional network that is growing and just the skill set that I have gained just from being in classes and doing some of this work, I think I'm very prepared to go out and impact education policy.
Great. I appreciate it. Let's go, Michael, to go next.
Hi, y'all, I'm Michael. My background before coming to Vanderbilt, out of undergrad, I did Teach for America. I taught in Atlanta for 2 years, and then 1 year after I finished my TFA commitment. Then after that, I worked over the summer after my 3rd year, I did Urban Leaders Fellowship, which we've already talked about a little bit. And that really kind of sparked my interest on where I could make a different type of impact. The way I guess I describe it to friends and family is when I was teaching, I felt like, public education was like this burning building, and I was going room to room, putting out a fire with my bucket of water. And when I got into that policy space with Urban Leaders Fellowship, I felt like, maybe I could be further down helping more of these workers get some bigger buckets, some more water to really help put out this fire. And so after that Urban Leaders Fellowship, I was actually moving with my wife to Baltimore. And so I was looking for policy level jobs because I was really excited after the Urban Leaders Fellowship in the summer. And this is right as the pandemic is going on, and I kind of just started. I was having all the policy jobs that I was looking at in kind of the Baltimore, DC area. They really wanted somebody with 1 to 2 years policy experience or a master's degree. And there were other jobs that I could have kind of gotten in the policy space, but I was really, as Dr. Balch had described, I was really looking for a position that really felt like it would fit for me. And I couldn't really find anything. And I found that without those things, it was really hard to get my foot in the door, and without the good connections that somewhere like Vanderbilt gets you. And so I taught again in Baltimore, but still with this like mindset of like, I really want to get into this policy space. How do I do it? I started looking through programs. I applied to several, but Vanderbilt's really was attractive to me because of just how they were placing their students. You know, it was very clear from just the stats they had that the people who went through the program were getting policy jobs. The policy jobs that they were getting were exciting to me. So I decided, you know, when I applied and I got accepted to several different schools, I said, Vanderbilt's the one for me. It worked out because my wife also applied to a fellowship at Vanderbilt and she got in. And so we both moved to Nashville. So I feel really like blessed about that, how all that worked out. Right now, when I work at Vanderbilt, I'm working as a Fuchs Fellow, which Fuchs is a research group. It's run by David and Lynn Fuchs, who they are implementing curriculum. They created a major curriculum that was implemented through schools nationally, and they kind of keep on getting grants, refining their curriculum, and they send out their research fellows to different schools in Metro Nashville to work with different grade levels on implementing curriculum and then doing the research to justify, like, is this curriculum working compared to their peers who are not doing the curriculum. So that's been really interesting work. And during the time, it's also, you know, it was really nice to get this and then also to kind of like focus down on some interests, because I found through Fuchs, it's a really great job, but I have other interests that are more exciting to me. And so, you know, classes kind of figured that out for me. And I've, you know, right now I'm in the process of looking at other things and reaching out to people. And there's so many connections that, you know, informational interviews are really easy to like get. You know, you can talk to virtually anybody in the policy space. And that's been really helpful. It's kind of in the process that I'm in right now. And for the last question, ways that it's prepared me for impact on education. One thing that I have found is that I have a really big interest in data and research, something that I didn't think going into the program. And so the power of some of the tools that we get when and it's like, you know, I'm just in my first year, so I'm going to get even more tools in my second, but just like that feeling of like, okay, this is like some practical, some really solid things that I'm putting into my tool set, that it's going to be really helpful in my job going in the future and just in the policy space in general. So that's one way that I feel like I felt like Vanderbilt has helped me tremendously.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And Sam, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah. So before I came to Vanderbilt, I grew up in Boise, Idaho, but before Vanderbilt specifically, I worked at the American Institutes for Research for a couple of years, doing a lot of federal work on education data. And I think kind of leading into the reason I came to Vanderbilt was that a lot of the federal work just didn't feel like it was doing anything, and wanted to get more of a sense of like how policy worked, how it could do work with like the data analysis skills that I had that would actually impact people and help kids and teachers. So that was a lot of the big reason that I chose Vanderbilt, was they seemed to give me that kind of mix of the like hard data skills and then also this value of knowing how things work. And I think a lot of the value of the experience has been, like other people have said, through talking to people, both like through networking and also other people in the cohort, right? I'd never stepped foot in a classroom, and I needed to develop more of that context, make sure that I'm doing this work in a way that will actually be helpful. So I think that's a big reason why this has helped. In terms of the work experiences, I've had a bunch. My W-2s are nonsense right now. There's so many of them, but I did work with the Tennessee State Board of Education. I did work on campus with faculty here, Sean Corcoran, on some work in New York City. And then for my kind of big summer practicum, I worked at the State Collaborative on Reforming Education, who do a lot of advocacy work in Tennessee and specifically Nashville around here. And so gotten to do a lot of really cool, really kind of hands-on work and develop just so much knowledge about like the actual intricacies of making policy. And I think the MPP program has really just kind of helped me build out in what ways I kind of need to look at data and research to actually leverage it in a way that can help people. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sam. And Fariha, can you finish this off?
Yeah. So just again, my name is Fariha. I am a first-year student in the K through 12 track. And my background before coming to Vanderbilt, I was a high school science teacher for 4 years in a project-based learning magnet school in Indiana. And while I was teaching, I also helped to shape some district level policy related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I worked with school board members and community stakeholders, district admin, to look at discipline data and build and train people on restorative justice protocols, but also work on underrepresented teacher recruitment and attainment on a district level. And I think in a lot of that work and looking at how it's implemented, I felt like there was just some skills that were missing at the table related to policy and actually looking at how effective programs were. And then just by being a teacher and being in a district space, I felt like I was limited in maybe the impact that I was able to have on some of those higher level policies and things like that. And so that sort of really pushed me to consider education policy. And so as I was exploring other programs, I think that Vanderbilt really stuck out to me because I felt like they would be able to give me a skill set that I didn't have, and maybe like develop those policy skills that we've talked about. And I really did also feel like 2 years was a solid amount of time to build those networks and develop those skills of practice and understand. And then, like I think a few others have said, like I did appreciate the specificity of education policy in this MPP program. So a combination of all of that and just the feeling that I would be supported here in pursuing whatever goals that I had, I think that really pushed me to consider Vanderbilt. And now that I'm here, again, we like as a first year, I haven't done my practicum yet, but I've been able to work with Ed Trust with Brianna. It's been a good time so far. It's nice getting to know just a little bit more about the Nashville education landscape, the different people who are playing roles, what policies look like, how people talk about them, how you can analyze them, thinking about what those larger conversations mean. So that's been great. I'm currently taking an education law class at the law school with one of our faculty members, Matthew Patrick Shaw. He's a lot of fun. It's just been a very interesting perspective being in a classroom of law students who aren't familiar with education the way that I am and not familiar with policy at all as well. And so I think that's pushing me to think differently as well. And so I just appreciate that I was supported in exploring those different opportunities. And then thinking about how I feel prepared to impact education, I think as of right now, I value the fact that this program has reminded me of just the plethora of people involved in education policy and the fact that like so many of them come from different backgrounds. They're not necessarily teachers or administrators, people who really spend time in the classroom. And I think that has pushed me to think about how to best frame topics and conversations that show up so that you can communicate ideas and viewpoints and whatever that is with people who come from different backgrounds, have different opinions on the work. And that's just, I think, relevant and important in education. And I think it's prepared me because in the sense that I am reminded regularly that there are different ways to have an impact on education, whether that's like on a local level or on a federal level, and just recognizing that there's flexibility to do it the way that I want to and embracing the skills and really the places that I'm most passionate about. So far, that's how I feel about what this program has showed me.
Got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I did see, we have about 5 minutes left. So I'll kind of answer a couple questions that were coming up. One, I was just doing through the chat, and then also just kind of about like how people choose their track. Effectively, you choose your track based on, you'll do like this form that you get here and do like a track declaration. Like it was in your application. And so of kind of like what you listed for your order of preference, and whatever you listed is basically what you get into. And then honestly, like the biggest thing is like at some point before you graduate, you need, it's like a formality where like if you indicated you wanted to be on K-12 track when you came in, but you kind of change over to more higher ed interests, you basically take the classes. And so if you're kind of saying, I want to get more into higher ed, you just take the classes in the higher ed track. And then at some point there's a, clerical piece of a track declaration form if you want to switch it or something like that, which is super easy. So, but basically it's following the curriculum that matches your needs is the best. So, And then, so one of the questions is about finding housing. So thinking about like, do y'all want to say kind of real briefly, like kind of the neighborhood, the area, kind of like where in town? There's also, by the way, while you're doing that, I'll pull up a slide that a student put together that we kind of do for our admitted students as well for some of this. So once we kind of, we've got the cohort together, but any of y'all want to kind of talk about your journey of finding a housing location?
Well, I was about to type it in here, but I used, since I had no idea anything about anything, I used Nashville apartment locators. So it's basically like a group of real estate agents who help you find apartments for free. Like, of course, they're like, they have a docket of different ones they work with. So like, you know, you may find a better deal someplace else, but they help you. It's completely free. You don't have to do it or not. But it really helped me, especially not being able to like actually physically be in Nashville, because they also do like virtual tours and stuff like that as well. Like you just tell them like what your budget is or like what's your price range, and they will like try their best to, you know, get in that range.
And I can kind of follow up on that. I think I also moved from DC, and what was really helpful for me, which I realize is like not sometimes viable for everyone, was I actually drove to Nashville in July and kind of drove around and just looked for rent signs and just started calling people. That was a lot of people I've talked to. That's been the way that they've found pretty affordable housing. I live in Hillsborough Village, which is just maybe a 10-minute walk to campus. So it's been really nice, but I think that's also if you can swing it, that's also a way that works really well.
Great, and you'll get more information a lot from like the admissions team, like kind of once, you know, for people that are kind of accepting the offer, they start sending you all kinds of information about stuff. But this is just something students put together. You'll see Vanderbilt kind of in the middle in that West End area. And so, I mean, I live in East Nashville, but you know, that's also, you know, I have 2 kids and all that kind of stuff like that. It's a lot of families, but a lot of other apartments too. So kind of, but those are the areas a lot of people live in, and just, you know, the closer to downtown, you know, proximity versus trying to find cost and things like that is the balance. But these are some of the main ones. There's a lot more information that'll come as well. And great, Cameron, I see you put that chat link in there, so I'll stop sharing that. Well, I think we can go ahead and stop the recording now. I know we're right at our time here. So this is not the only chance that you have to ask questions. You're welcome to, and if any of the students, if you wouldn't mind like kind of listing your email address, if you wanted to kind of follow up with any individuals, you're welcome to. You're welcome to ask me questions. I can connect you with any of the students as well, if it would be helpful, if there was a particular experience you were interested in, and so forth with it. So, but other than that, I just thank you for attending, and let me know, again, this is very much for the purpose of you trying to find out what your fit is. I think that's a really important part, whether that's here, whether it's somewhere else, whether depending on the track and so forth with it. So I hope to see you at our next session coming up in March, and they will all, admissions team will let you know more information about that. If you haven't, and let me know if you have any other pieces you'd like to discuss, or reach out to any of the students that just were listing their email address there. So thank you, current students, so much for your sharing your experience, and thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day.